Okay, so I've had this thought about this topic for a little while, and I wanted to kind of put it out there and see what you guys thought about this. And that is, of course, we see a lot of like videos on today's society, the world, this generation versus that generation versus the previous generation. And we all have our opinions, right? Because everybody's entitled to their opinion. um, Everybody feels like, hey, my generation was better, or the way I was brought up was better, or today's generation does not have values or respect, right? The list is on and on, right? I mean, I could sit here and tell you what I think, and about putting in your time, and earning your stripes, and paying your dues, and waiting your time to shine, and so forth, right? But we don't live in that world anymore. And so the thought, I guess more than a question, but the thought, if you want to call it a question, is depending on the area that you grew up in, right? Some areas were better for you, depending on your your race, your color, your tone, your wealth, your if you were low poverty versus middle class versus upper class. The time that you grew up, I think there's two factors, right? Some people might say three. The era that you grew up, meaning if you were a minority color growing up in the 40s, 50s, 60s, might not have been the best time, right? Versus 80s, 90s to present. So the era that you grew up in matters. Unfortunately, I know we hate talking about, but your color, your race, your tone, that plays a factor in it, right? Your wealth, whether you're poor, poverty, or middle class or upper class, right? And the last factor I think is important is the area you grew up in, meaning what state, city, county, country, you know, whatever, right? Those things play a factor in your upbringing. Some people grew up in a harsh environment, maybe in the ghetto, bad part of town, versus some people that grew up in the country, very, very quiet, slow life, right? Not sheltered, but just more quiet, right? Because when you're in the country, you work harder, you do things. Most people do, right? You grow up on a farm, you do a lot of physical work. And then you have your middle class, right? That, you don't have to work hard like you're on the farm, and you're not rich, so you don't have maids and butlers to do things for you. You still have to do some things yourself, right? But I think about this topic, or this question that I'm working my way to get to, and that is, I guess depending on the era that you grew up in, right? 1940s, 50s, 60s may have not been the best time for people of color, right? Brown, black, yellow, whatever, versus now, right? But looking at all the time generations, and looking at the present, is it better to have some structure? And yes, maybe things are not fair, but to have some law and order and structure, and have some of the freedoms that we had then, right? Versus having a lot more choices now, but having no structure. It just seems chaotic. And it could vary, right? Depending on, color, where you grew up at, right? Your poverty level, and your location. It's going to vary, because how I see things, how I grew up, is much different from other people. And I think that that's just something that I ponder on. Like, do you want law and order and structure, and that it doesn't seem like you have as much options or choices or not as fair? Or do you want the Wild West chaos of today? Like, everybody has free reign to say whatever they want, defund the police. Everybody wants 20 choices. Nobody wants to put in their time. Nobody wants to earn their stripes. Everybody wants quick, 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 quick. We give up a lot of our personal abilities to have the freedoms and choices because of technology of today, face recognition, you know, all the unicorn stuff, etc. Which would you rather have? You know, it's finding that balance. But I just know the world that I grew up is not the world today.